Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Wyatt Claypool Show, where we try and laugh through the disastrous Justin Trudeau years of Canadian politics and hopefully come out on the other side with a better government eventually. But for now, we can just point and laugh because Justin Trudeau is an absolute clown of a prime minister. And so this clip just surfaced from yesterday of Justin Trudeau at a press conference where he had another one of his standard meltdowns when the topic of climate change was brought up, because he feels like if he can instill enough moral panic in this issue that maybe he can drag himself up higher in the polls. It's not going to happen. And this current sort of spate of wildfires we have in Alberta and other parts of the country, they're already dying off. We have a very rainy season right now. And when you actually looked at the maps being put out from the government of Alberta, there's like 1-2 fires that weren't in control. The vast majority of them were in control or being monitored because they weren't really a big enough thing. It's quite sick to me that there's so many on the political left these days who are actively cheering on wildfires to ruin people's homes so that they can campaign on it. I thought we all wanted less disasters, but the climate change crowd, the people who make everything, like they turn every single issue into climate change, these people like the destruction because then they can do what they like in government on the justification that if you don't go along with them, then you want more wildfires when they're the ones who want more wildfires. And that's why they keep wanting to play up every single fire as the worst thing that's ever happened to us. So here's Justin Trudeau at this press conference going off.
When he talks about axing the tax, he talks about stopping the fight against climate change at a time where the country is burning, at a time where floods and storms are having an impact on every corner of the country, and at a time when Canadians are struggling with the cost of living. He wants to take away checks that put more money in their pockets. His ideology is so strong, he would rather watch the country burn and Canadians suffer than continue to fight against climate change and put the Canada carbon rebate in their pocket.
Completely ridiculous. Justin Trudeau is the one wanting the country to burn. And I like how he still can't choose whether or not he's marketing the carbon tax on, we will save the planet with this, or this is putting more money in your pocket. It's not doing either, but you can't hold both of those positions at the same time. Either it's punishing people for using energy and causing them to use it less, which is not happening because energy is an inelastic good. It doesn't matter how high of a tax you put on it, people will forego other goods before they cut energy. Can't really cut energy in a Canadian winter. But then the other thing is it's putting more money back in your pocket. So how is anyone being disincentivized from using energy and causing emissions if they are literally, supposedly, being paid back more than they are actually paying in the carbon tax? It doesn't make sense because it's not meant to make sense. It's meant to just win him votes. And I was going to mention another thing here that was kind of odd about, oh yeah, like the whole thing about he wants the country to burn. I think he should be the one who realizes rhetoric like that does not attract people at all. It just makes him seem very angry and desperate. And the amount of people, when you look at the polling, who actually are voting based on climate change is like 4%, 5% of voters. Sometimes in the Nanos polls, it gets as high as 12%. But factor in the fact that the Green Party has 100% of their vote coming from the climate change concerned crowd. And then you consider that there's probably only about 7% left in some of the highest polls for the NDP and the Liberals to divide. This is a really weak issue for them to be going after because they already own this issue. The Conservatives aren't talking about it because they have nobody to win on the issue. Not that it's that the Conservatives would be implementing a carbon tax if they could get votes. I don't think they would be doing that. Aaron O'Toole was enough of a fool, rhyming, that he was willing to try and win voters by saying, I have my own carbon plan, but none of those voters are willing to be swayed, and the plans don't work in the first place in terms of reducing emissions. And another thing that people never bring up, this is the thing I was trying to remember, is that has anyone ever noticed that we never hear about the crazy wildfire seasons in China or India? These are countries that don't exactly not have forests. We don't hear about the crazy wildfires in Brazil. We don't hear about the crazy wildfires in other heavily forested countries. It's mostly only in Canada. It's not because anyone's up to anything, but you have to remember, China has, when you actually look at the concentrated, dense carbon emissions from their major manufacturing centers, based on the theory about how climate works from the left in Canada, they should be having constant wildfires. There should be such a dry environment around there. There should be just like conditions making it so that fires are popping up everywhere. And it's like, it's not. And it's because in Canada, we have a lot of people who go camping. We have a lot in the lumber industry. We have a lot of interactions with the forested areas of the country. And because of human error, we end up causing a lot more fires. It has purely to do with better forest management in order to cut down on wildfires. We, for some reason, or at least the green left, considers forest management to be anti-environmental. The idea that we every once in a while need to cut channels out of the forest to have fire breaks so that if human error causes a fire, it's not going to go out of the couple square kilometers that it's in and we can contain it. That's the thing that happens in other countries, that they don't have they don't have a big camping culture, they don't have a big forestry industry, so they don't interact with the forest a lot, so fires don't start. The more interaction with our forested areas when it's dry outside will cause a lot more fires. Even last year, when people were freaking out about the fires, it wasn't actually that bad a fire season. We had some moderate fire seasons in 4 or 5 provinces, which is a lot. But it's just a normal year. We usually have 1 or 2 provinces that have big fire seasons. And those fire seasons are usually worse than last year. We just happened to roll the dice and had a bunch of fire seasons in Nova Scotia, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, and the rest of the country. Anyways, well, I want to move on to another issue that is not great for the Liberals. They've truly not been having a good week at all, and I want to talk about immigration and our current immigration minister, Marc Miller. This man must have, I don't want to say it that way. This man really loves putting his own foot in his mouth. This guy, for some reason, cannot stop himself from being his own worst enemy on this immigration file. The last week, he said, well, how are we going to deal with the excess amount of temporary foreign workers and students in this country? And by the way, in 2024, despite the fact that he said he was going to put a cap on things, we have more temporary foreign workers and students up to this point of the year than we did in 23. So the cap was purely fake. The cap is so high, we would have to literally double our intake before we'd even reach it. I don't think it's that high, but my point is that there's really nothing enforceable about the cap that the Liberals have put in place. They're not going to reject anybody. They haven't yet. And Marc Miller said, well, if you don't like so many temporary foreign workers and students, maybe we should just make them temporary, like permanent residents and citizens. Like, oh, goodness, Marc, I want you guys in the Liberals to lose, but not this way. Not this way, Marc. I want to beat you guys in a straight up fight, not with you literally burning down your own house here. It was such an absurd take because remember, when you look at the polling, citizens in Canada, 68% of them think immigration is too high. And remember, in all those statistics, there's a certain portion of people who like to pretend to be agnostic. Oh, I don't know if it's too much, even though they probably do believe it's too much. But even new Canadians, people who are permanent residents or those who are born outside of the country, 65% of them, or 63%, think we bring in too much immigration. That is a consensus issue when you have both foreign-born as well as domestically born Canadians saying, yes, it's too much. Like, I go door knocking a lot in my area of Calgary Signal Hill. Since, shameless plug, I'm Wyatt Claypool and I'm running for the Calgary Signal Hill Conservative Party nomination. And I talk to citizens, like non-permanent residents and very new Canadians all the time. And they're the ones who most aggressively will tell you immigration is too high. I live in a part of the city with a little bit of a higher net worth, so a lot of these new immigrants have a lot of like skills in oil and gas and tech. They were big assets to the country to bring in. And they get annoyed with all the people coming in who are exploiting these temporary foreign worker or permanent resident job programs where they are put front of the line for several jobs and then are basically artificially propped up. They hate that because they got in the country with a really good set of skills. They had the assets to live here and they were contributing. They find it annoying that people are coming in with their entire families and they work like a part-time job at like a fast food restaurant. Like, that's not worth bringing people into the country for, especially when it's just driving wages down. PEI is doing the right thing on this issue by saying we're no longer going to have temporary foreign worker and permanent resident incentives for companies to hire them over citizens. It should just be pure meritocracy that determines who's going to get a job. But here is Marc Miller on, I believe, CTV News trying to now walk back his really ridiculous statements about trying to make all temporary foreign workers permanent residents.
the proper education.
Lastly, I just wanted to ask you, you kind of come under fire for things that were said about how international students get criminal record checks in their home countries. Are they getting criminal record checks in their home countries?
Yeah, look, excellent question. I think the source of that criticism is from someone who is also wanting to ban Tim Hortons. And
to be fair, I think this might not be the clip where he made the point about the temporary foreign workers thing, but this is still a good point.
And is against plastic cardboard lids on cups. But even I'll take that for what it's worth. The reality is that on every student that comes through the student streams, other than the US, we do biometrics. Those biometrics go through a database and we check. We do take a risk profile of the people that we ask or that come to this country, like any temporary resident, whether it's through the student stream or not. I think we do have to also disabuse ourselves of the notion that Canada is totally impermeable or that necessarily criminality occurs in the source country or when they get here. So, you know,
sorry about that, guys. I read the post wrong, but that is still an egregious clip. But in another post, he's been walking back his statement saying we need to turn people into permanent residents if we don't like too many foreign workers. But yeah, that's another thing. We do not do any sort of criminal background checks on new permanent residents and temporary foreign workers and students. The guys who whacked Najjar out in British Columbia, that Khalistani activist, they were brought in on student visas, had overstayed them, were criminals, and even one of the guys who was involved in the shooting of Najjar literally was released from prison a few days before the shooting because we don't hold criminals accountable for their actions anymore, and we just kind of give them a slap on the wrist and tell them to maybe show up for court for their charges in 3 years, and they're never going to do that because there's no incentive to do that because we're never going to come after them. It's such a weird country right now. Yeah, Marc Miller is utterly incompetent, and it's great to see that there's a lot of people now coming out in favor of reducing immigration, not just silently talking about behind the scenes, but they're actually running on that. And the Conservative Party should become more aggressive on running on that. I know Poilievre has said that we need to reduce immigration to lower housing prices, which is indicative of the idea that we're going to have to like maybe half or even more than half our current immigration rate. But it would be good for us to come out with a specific number. I don't begrudge anyone from not doing it yet. We're still quite a ways out from the next election. Anyways, I wanted to move on to this post that Justin Trudeau put up today that I don't know why they think this is a good play, but this actually came out of the Liberal Party's comms department on Twitter, going after the Conservatives for supposedly not being pro 2S LGBTQI plus. Nobody is coming out and voting for the Liberals based on this. And the problem is they're still competing with the Bloc, the NDP, and the Greens, who have the exact same messaging. Most Canadians want done with gender theory. They don't want gender theory being taught in the classroom. They want the government to stop pushing woke ideas. And the idea that you're going to use gay people as a Trojan horse to then push Marxist wokeism is foolish and it's insulting. There's a reason why there's an entire movement of gay Canadians and as well as gay Americans down in the US who are pushing back against the idea that their community is going to be used as a front for cultural Marxism. They want to be left alone. There's a lot of gay conservatives out there who hate the idea that the Liberals are basically using them as a platform to try and run on when they've hurt them as much as they've hurt any other Canadian with their terrible policies.
Does not have a right to impose his radical gender ideology on our kids.
Agree? Like, I don't know what the Liberals can have wrong with this. And then they're like, oh, we took a photo with a guy with a straight pride shirt. You know what? Who really cares? And you can tell that the Liberals probably care about this issue a little too much. And when I say that, I mean that they are really overextending themselves on this kind of LGBTQ type rhetoric about how they're the only party of tolerance. And if you vote for the Conservatives, they're going to, attack gay people or whatever. Ridiculous, stupid. They have nothing. It's like the abortion issue. If anything, them bringing up abortion is just going to make Canadians far more pro-life, because the more the Liberals make their brand the brand of wokeism, the more Canadians are going to hate it. Even if they maybe don't disagree with it on the surface, although they should. Trudeau is such an unpopular politician. If he's in favor of something, at least half the country is now going to be against it. And that's just the symptom of being a terrible leader. But Justin Trudeau then posted this today, which was extremely hypocritical. And it says, if someone says that the fight for 2S LGBTQI plus equality is over, just think how often a queer student is bullied or a trans person is attacked. Honestly, not that often. It's an incredibly overblown issue. And it's not overblown because I don't care if someone gets attacked. If someone gets attacked, that's sick and wrong, obviously. But the idea that this is an epidemic is insane. But I'm going to get to in a second an actual epidemic that he is ignoring. But he ends this post off by saying, "We've come a long way, but we have work to do to make Canada a safer, more inclusive place." Well, do you know what Justin Trudeau and Liberal Party officials and MPs didn't do this week? They didn't stand up for a Jewish boy in Toronto who had rocks thrown at him for being Jewish by other students trying to, like, I don't know, blame him for fake crimes of Israel. And the only MP who showed up for this, I believe there were some Conservative Party officials there, though, was independent MP Kevin Vuong. He used to be a Liberal and he was kicked out of the party based on a fake smear that the Liberals basically went along with because they didn't like the fact that Kevin Vuong became a candidate for them and was an anti-communist. And so they kicked him out of caucus. But since then, Kevin has actually been one of the more outspoken and more conservative MPs in Parliament. Very good MP. And he actually showed up for this Jewish boy and walked him to school. At the same time that the Liberals are saying that they're so in favor of protecting trans and gay kids from being bullied, they don't show up for the Jewish kid who got bullied because they know their base doesn't care, so they're not going to care. But here it's Kevin Vuong at this event where he was talking about the lack of support from Liberal Party officials for this little boy.
Allies are here too, and I am here to stand with the family. And I'm sorry that your MP isn't here.
Where's Yara?
I'm but I am here because I want your community to know that there are allies who stand with you. There are Toronto MPs who do stand with you. And while yours may not, I do.
Yeah, obviously there's not a problem with no Conservative MPs being there because there's no Toronto Conservative MPs. So he was the only one who actually showed up for this bullied child. And that the local MP in that area is Yara Sachs, the Jewish lady who went and shook hands with Mahmoud Abbas over in the West Bank, a man who literally pays the family of terrorists who get arrested for stabbing or killing Israelis, or even gives their family basically a pension if they kill enough Jewish people. That's someone that Yara Sachs went to go and talk to. And she's also the lady who in Parliament during the Freedom Convoy stood up and said, well, all these Freedom Convoy supporters are a bunch of racist Nazis, and whenever they honk their horns, honk, honk, it stands for Heil Hitler. She is absolutely the symbol of liberal hypocrisy in that government. She will throw her own community under the bus and not stand up for a little boy who's being stoned at school because our base doesn't like that. Our base is rabidly anti-Israel, so we're not going to show up because that might hurt us with certain groups that we're trying to win over. Utterly pathetic, utterly without principle, but the Liberal Party is going to stand up for LGBTQ kids. They're creating a fake problem, a problem that is not an epidemic, in order to pretend that they're the party of tolerance and inclusion, when in fact they don't actually care about including anyone. I'm not sure if you guys saw that one video as well of that Jewish girl in New Brunswick who got attacked by students for being Jewish. Literally, there's a video of her being tackled in the parking lot because she was, like, I guess, Jewish and didn't hate Israel. It's disgusting that this stuff goes on. And again, the premier of New Brunswick, Blaine Higgs, stood up for her. But what did the Liberals, what did any local NDP Green politician say? Nothing. They don't care because it's not worth getting votes to stand up for Jewish people. And that's where I find all these people are utterly contemptible and they need to be removed from office. And it's not because that if you don't stand up for Israel, I hate you or something like that. I'm pro-Israel. You don't have to be. I know a lot of people just don't care about foreign policy. So any country outside of Canada becomes a little bit of a, don't really want to get involved. I understand that. I don't always agree with that approach. Like, people are like, well, why are you obsessed with Israel? I'm not. I also like the country of Georgia. Sometimes I wear a Georgian lapel pin. I even wear a South Vietnam lapel pin. a Taiwanese lapel pin, Canadian pins, obviously. I just like Western allies around the world because I would like the rest of the world to be a little bit more like Canada rather than the rest of the world trying to influence Canada and turn us into a country where we want, I don't know, ethnic sectarian divisions and fighting and whatnot and non-Canadian values. I want to stand up for Canadian values, and I stand for countries who support values that are similar to Canada's. That's why Taiwan's great. That's why I stood up for Hong Kong freedom fighters. I would trade every woke leftist, every white woke leftist for Hong Kong pro-democracy individuals, for Nigerian Christians, because they actually believe in Canadian values despite the fact that they don't live here. They actually care about family. They actually don't want massive big government programs running their lives. They actually like freedom. I am pro-freedom, and I think that freedom is the brand of Canada. And although that Justin Trudeau is trying to destroy that brand, it's a good thing to fight for and restore it and then defend it. But wow, isn't it such a great, isn't everything in Canada so great right now? Kidding. I just want to go quickly check on the polls. I saw a great poll that just came out specifically about British Columbia. This isn't the British Columbia provincial poll, it's the federal poll. And I just wanted to highlight how good the federal Conservatives are currently doing in British Columbia, because I believe that this is going to be a springboard for the provincial Liberals to do even better than they currently are doing in the polls. You saw that last one. I'll maybe bring it up on screen here quickly. You saw that one I made a video about yesterday where, yeah, right here, the Conservatives are actually 1% ahead of the NDP, this Palace poll. I said it was a Polera poll yesterday. My mistake. Polera actually is another polling firm. They have very similar names when I just kind of glance my eyes across the screen. But yeah, so the Conservatives in BC are currently 1% ahead of the NDP. They're still not doing as well in Vancouver Island and Greater Vancouver. So they do need to pick up some steam there if they want to be able to win the most seats, because right now they're overperforming in sort of the rural areas that they already have on lock. So now they have to start shifting that support towards the Vancouver donut as well as in the more rural areas of Vancouver Island, which is a NDP and Green Party stronghold. Oh goodness, I'm just like falling all over myself right here. But here is the poll of the federal Conservatives' performance in British Columbia right now. They're at 44%. NDP's at 26, mostly just off of the strength of the provincial NDP. Liberals are at 18 and Greens at 8. And I think this is actually quite well tracks to the provincial polling, because you'll notice that the BC United are at 13%, and that's pretty close to what the federal Liberals are at, 18. And then, though, the NDP, of course, is doing better because it is the party for a lot of federal Liberals, because they know that the provincial Liberal Party, also known as BC United now, can't win. But this is why BC United is actually very useful to stay in this race. A lot of people get vote split crazy. They think that only conservative votes ever split. For some reason, left votes are completely rock solid, and the people who vote for the party on the left want that party. It's the same thing on the right. People vote for the party they want. The BC Conservatives are a far superior party to the United, and so they shouldn't fear the BC United stealing any votes from them, because the BC United are not doing any better on conservative issues than the BC Conservatives are. So they're not going to pull away any voters because they happen to have better stances on certain issues. Not going to happen. The BC Conservatives are going to start slowly funnel all the federal votes into their party. The BC United are actually very key to keep around because they're kind of like the RFK Jr. of this provincial race. Like, take the metaphor or analogy for a second. But when RFK Jr. first announced that he was going to run as an independent candidate for president, he was expected to do more damage to Donald Trump, because Donald Trump, as the more eccentric and conservative politician, seemed to track decently close to RFK Jr.'s crowd, because although RFK Jr. is a lifelong Democrat, he's a little bit more eccentric. He was against lockdowns and COVID mandates and that sort of stuff. And then he sort of seemed to stand up to the woke establishment. But as time went on, it was obvious that Trump was probably going to take all of the Republican or Republican-leaning independent votes away from RFK's camp. And then what that left was just RFK Jr. stealing Democrats too nervous to vote for Joe Biden. And so now if I go back to provincial politics in British Columbia, the United used to be a bigger suck on the British Columbia Conservatives, because BC voters didn't know who was more likely to be the main opposition to the NDP. Is it the United? Is it the Conservatives? But as the Conservatives have consolidated, there's really no excuse left to sit around the United as a federal Conservative. I don't think that United are going to win more than 5% of federal Conservative votes. And so all of that has already been mostly divested towards the BC Conservatives. I think they still have maybe 2 or 3 points left in at least this poll that they could steal away from the BC United. And then the rest of that poll, that the rest of the BC United's support, at least from my view, is people too nervous to vote for the NDP and people who, because they don't live on Vancouver Island, they can't really vote for the Greens because the Greens don't have presence in Vancouver Metro. So this is actually a great thing for the Conservatives that John Rustad had rejected the offers to merge from the BC United or start a new party with Brad West, the mayor of Port Coquitlam, as the leader. That was not going to help out the Conservative brand. If anything, it's great that John Rustad, and this is probably going to gain him more support, that he rejected the merger because he proved he has nerve. I hate it whenever there's some idea that comes along that if we merge, we have a better chance of winning. No, we do not, because you've just demonstrated that you're weak. You demonstrated that you don't believe in the brand, and so that you had to join with another party. Mark my words, if the PC Party and the Wild Rose never merged in Alberta, the Wild Rose would currently hold government. It would be no question that the Wild Rose would have consolidated all of the PC support that wouldn't have gone to the NDP and would have won the next provincial election. And if anything, the merger has actually hurt the party in the long run because you brought back in all the Progressive Conservative Party consultants into the UCP who've had to have, like, there's been continuing battles with them since the parties merged back in, I believe, early 2019 or 2018, end of 2018. So yeah, that's what would happen in British Columbia if United and the Conservatives merged. Even if they merged into the Conservatives and they kept the Conservative name, you're going to have all the useless people from the United who drove the Liberal Party / United into the ground, then joining your party, and you think it's going to be successful? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for different results, and trying to tie your wagon to Kevin Falcon is a very silly move. And it's good that John Rustad just unequivocally said no. You guys mocked us for wanting to maybe talk about mergers 5 months ago when we were tied, and now that you're down in the dumps, you're looking to merge. Not going to happen. The Conservatives have the right platform to win British Columbia. They just need to market it harder. They need more door knocking. They need advertising. So if you live in BC, make sure you go donate to them. They need the money. Anyways, well, that's kind of me wrapping up the show here. If you have any other topics you want me to talk about in the next episode, just leave them in the comment section below. Make sure to like this video, subscribe, share, and you can join the TNT Telegram channel in the description of this video below. I forgot to add in the link last episode, so if you click on that in the description, you'll see all of our videos and all of our content come by, kind of chronologically to you, rather than having to rely on social media algorithms to show us to show you our content. And then on top of that, remember, we have our legal fund linked in the description of this video below. If you want to contribute to the legal fund, make sure you go over there and you give us any amount of money that you're able to afford. We have this ongoing lawsuit that's cost us more than $29,000 fighting against a billionaire developer, suing us for defamation for noting his donations to Aaron O'Toole's leadership campaign. And after 2.5 years, he still hasn't found a single thing that we've said that he can actually prove with evidence was defamatory. Literally everything we said about this guy, and he was not even the main subject of the article, was just from a Globe and Mail investigation of him by Robert Fife and Stephen Chase, seasoned investigative reporters, which he never evidently sued them. And by law, I don't think you can even sue someone for defamation when they just repeated something that someone a long time ago had also said, who you never had issue with at the time. That's just not how this works. And so we're probably going to win this case, but donating anything to us really helps us get through it. And then, as I said before, I, Wyatt Claypool, am running for the Calgary Signal Hill Conservative Party nomination. So if you're a federal Conservative Party member in this riding, the membership date is closed to purchase a member to become a member. Purchase a membership to become a member. So, but if you live in this area, make sure you, if you're a Conservative member, you vote for me #1 on your ballot. See you guys later.